I still can't wrap my head around what happened on our moving day. There I was, driving behind our moving truck, headed toward our new home in Oakwood Estates, the place we'd dreamed about for months. It felt surreal that we were finally doing it, starting over in a quiet neighborhood where everything looked picture perfect. My wife, Jessica, was in the car behind me, following close, her window rolled down, her hair fluttering in the warm breeze. We were both exhausted but buzzing with excitement, ready to unpack, decorate, and finally settle into our first home together. Everything was going exactly as planned, until we turned onto Maple Avenue. That's when my heart sank. Right there, in the middle of the road, stood a middle-aged woman with short, tightly curled hair, wearing a floral blouse and pressed capri pants. Her stance was firm, arms crossed, chin raised, like she'd been expecting us. Behind her sat a foldable lawn chair planted squarely on the asphalt, as if she had decided this street now belonged to her. Our moving truck screeched to a stop. I pulled up beside it, rolled down my window, and tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Before I could even ask a question, the woman stormed toward my car with the confidence of a traffic cop and the glare of someone who thought she owned the whole neighborhood. "You don't have HOA approval to move in today," she declared, loud enough for the entire street to hear. "This street is closed for unauthorized relocations." For a moment, I honestly thought she was joking. I blinked at her, waiting for a smirk, a laugh, something. But her expression was dead serious. Mike, the moving truck driver, a big guy with a sunburned neck and a puzzled look, stepped out and scratched his head. "Ma'am, we have a scheduled delivery here," he said, confused. "We need to unload this furniture today." That's when she pulled out a clipboard, flipping through pages with exaggerated authority. "I don't see your name on my approved moving schedule," she said with a smug little smile. "All new residents require advanced HOA clearance before bringing large vehicles onto our streets." That woman, I'd soon learn, was Karen Peterson, the self-proclaimed president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. I stepped out of my car, doing my best to stay calm even though my blood pressure was rising fast. Jessica joined me, gripping my hand tightly. We had spent years saving for this little fixer-upper, our first home, and the last thing we needed was some self-appointed gatekeeper ruining what should have been a perfect day. "I'm Daniel Matthews," I said evenly, extending my hand. She ignored it. "We closed on 4278 Maple Avenue last week," I continued. "I don't remember reading anything about needing permission to move in." Karen's eyes narrowed as she looked us up and down like we were trespassers on her personal property. "You people," she said slowly, "are exactly what I was afraid of. Young couples who don't respect community standards. I've been HOA president for 7 years. I know every bylaw by heart." What she didn't know was that I'd read those same bylaws front to back. I work as a paralegal. Digging through dense documents is literally my day job. And there was absolutely nothing about needing permission for moving day. Truth is, this wasn't our first run-in with Karen. In the week leading up to the move, she had called us repeatedly, demanding we fill out bogus forms, threatening us with fines if we didn't comply. We'd thought she was bluffing, just another overzealous neighbor who'd calm down once she saw we were normal people. Clearly, we were wrong. "I'm going to need to see these bylaws you're referring to," I said, forcing a polite tone even as my patience wore thin. "Because we've followed every official requirement for this move." Karen's face turned red. She jabbed a finger toward an SUV parked sideways across the street, another blockade. "That's my vehicle," she said proudly. "And it's not moving until you show me your HOA relocation authorization forms. I've already called an emergency board meeting next week to discuss your violation." By now, neighbors were starting to gather, stepping onto their lawns, whispering, filming. I could feel their eyes on us. A few exchanged awkward looks like they'd seen this show before. Mike, the mover, came up beside me with a grimace. "Listen, man," he said quietly, "we're on a tight schedule. I've got another delivery after this. Any way we can resolve this fast?" Jessica, who had been silent up to that point, finally stepped forward. Her voice was firm. "I'm calling the police," she said, pulling out her phone. "This is ridiculous." Karen's expression shifted, a flash of panic. but she quickly masked it with bravado. She marched back to her lawn chair, sat down, crossed her arms again, and said, "Go ahead, call them. I have full jurisdiction over who enters this neighborhood. I'm protecting our property values from unauthorized move-ins." While Jessica dialed, I turned toward the watching neighbors. An elderly man shuffled forward and introduced himself as Frank. He gave me an apologetic nod. "She does this all the time," he whispered. "Last month, she blocked an Amazon van for 20 minutes because it came after 5. Said it violated some noise ordinance." Another neighbor, a woman walking her dog, rolled her eyes. "Karen just likes the power trip. There's no rule about moving permissions. My son moved in last year. All he needed was a city parking permit for the truck, which, by the way, I see you already have." As we waited for the police, Karen started pacing dramatically in front of her barricade, making loud proclamations about defending the integrity of Oakwood Estates and protecting the exclusive standards of our community. To her, our modest moving truck must have looked like an invasion, a threat to her perfect little world. I decided to start filming everything. If she wanted to make this official, fine, I'd have the evidence. Karen spotted me instantly. Her face twisted in outrage as she stomped toward me, finger raised. "It's against HOA rules to film me without permission," she barked. "Actually," I said calmly, holding my phone steady, "we're standing on a public street. There's no expectation of privacy here, especially not when you're blocking access to my own home." Karen's face twisted into an expression of pure outrage, her jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. But before she could fire back, the sharp chirp of a police siren cut through the air. A cruiser rolled up beside us, tires crunching against the pavement. The officer stepped out, tall, calm, and already scanning the situation. His gaze moved from the moving truck to the blocked-off road, then finally to Karen's SUV parked sideways like a barricade. Karen immediately began adjusting her blouse, straightening her posture like she was about to address a courtroom. "What seems to be the problem here?" the officer asked, his tone professional but wary, like he already suspected who the troublemaker was. Karen wasted no time. She practically lunged forward, speaking fast and waving her clipboard like a badge of authority. "Officer, I'm Karen Peterson, president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association," she announced. "These people are attempting to move in without proper HOA authorization, a clear violation of community standards. I've asked them repeatedly to produce documentation, but they refuse." The officer turned to me, one brow raised. I handed him our closing paperwork and the city's moving permit. "We legally closed on this home last week," I explained. "There's nothing in the HOA bylaws about needing approval for moving day. I've actually got the bylaws saved right here." I held up my phone, ready to prove it. The officer nodded, then turned to Karen. "Do you have documentation of this rule, ma'am?" Karen froze for a second, blinking. "Well, it's an unwritten rule," she said finally. "Everyone in the neighborhood knows it. As HOA president, I have full jurisdiction over who enters and when." The officer sighed, clearly a man who'd seen this kind of suburban drama before. "Ma'am," he said patiently, "you don't have jurisdiction over public roads. These folks have all the proper paperwork. I'm going to have to ask you to move your vehicle and let them through." Karen's lips tightened. "I will not," she barked. "This is HOA property, and I decide what happens here. If you try to make me move, I'll have your badge and call your supervisor." That was it. The officer's patience finally snapped. His tone hardened. "Ma'am, this is a public street maintained by the city. Your HOA has no authority to block it. Now I'm asking you one more time to move your vehicle." Karen crossed her arms, trembling with fury. "Do you even know who I am? I'm personally friends with the mayor. I organize the annual fundraiser. You can't tell me what to do on my own street." And that's when it happened. The officer quietly reached for his handcuffs. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and disorderly conduct. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." For a long second, Karen just stood there, frozen in disbelief. "You can't be serious," she stammered. "I'm the HOA president." "Being HOA president doesn't make you above the law," the officer replied firmly, turning her around and cuffing her wrists. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The sight of her being led away left the street completely silent. Neighbors who had been hiding behind curtains now stepped outside. Some filmed on their phones. Others simply shook their heads. Not a single person came to Karen's defense. Another officer arrived to move her SUV out of the way. And finally, after nearly an hour of chaos, our moving truck was able to roll forward toward our new driveway. As Karen was escorted into the cruiser, still shouting about her authority and how we would regret this, the tension in the air seemed to dissolve. The neighbors began to approach, introducing themselves with smiles that looked almost relieved. "She's been terrorizing this neighborhood for years," one woman said, helping Jessica carry a box toward the porch. "Last summer, she blocked a landscaping crew because she didn't approve of the flowers they were planting in the Rodriguez family's yard." Another man, older, with gray hair and a gentle voice, shook his head as he helped guide the movers. "She once called the cops on an ambulance parked slightly off the curb. Poor Mrs. Wilson was having a heart attack. The paramedics had to argue with her before they could even load the patient." The more we unpacked, the more horror stories we heard. Karen had been running Oakwood Estates like her personal fiefdom, issuing fake fines, inventing rules on the spot, and threatening lawsuits against anyone who dared to question her. Most people just gave in, afraid of the hassle, but not today. By sunset, we had furniture in place and half our boxes unpacked. Jessica was unrolling a rug in the living room when there was a knock on the door. It was Mike, the moving truck driver, along with several neighbors carrying pizzas and soda. "Thought you might be hungry after all that drama," Mike said with a grin. "And figured we'd welcome you properly," we laughed, grateful and exhausted. As everyone gathered around the kitchen island, the mood was light, almost celebratory. Between bites of pizza, the neighbors filled us in on what had happened after the arrest. Karen had been booked for 2 misdemeanor charges, obstruction of justice and disorderly conduct. She was released on bail, but her behavior toward the officer hadn't helped her case. She was looking at up to $2,000 in fines and possibly 30 days in jail. But the bigger news came from the HOA board itself. That very evening, an emergency meeting had been called, and the vote was unanimous. Karen Peterson was officially removed as HOA president, effective immediately. According to one neighbor, when she found out, she had a complete meltdown at the police station, screaming that she would sue everyone involved, even the city. The officer who'd arrested her just shook his head and said, "Ma'am, this attitude is exactly why you're here. Apparently," her face in that moment, part shock, part fury, and just a hint of fear, said it all. For the first time in years, Karen Peterson, self-proclaimed queen of Oakwood Estates, realized her reign was over. And as Jessica and I stood in our new living room that night, surrounded by friendly neighbors and laughter, I couldn't help but smile. We hadn't just moved into a new home, we'd helped a whole neighborhood reclaim its peace.